In Bali, people's lives are controlled and run along this religious clock.
Yes.
You know, it's the harvest. Yeah. There are even ways of worshipping your vehicles, your machinery.
Sure. Silly, but probably harmless. I guess what I say. What I say.
You wouldn't like to see it gone, though, would you?
No. What I say in my introduction is that all of that and more, better and worse, it's not I don't mind. I mean, how tolerant can I get? How nice do you want me to be? It's not. It's just that I may dislike it very much, but I don't expect people to give it up or want them to. I insist only that they leave me out of it. Okay? That I don't have to know what they believe. That they don't want a subsidy from the government for it, that they don't try and teach it to my children, that they don't expect me to have to live under it in any way, then that's all absolutely fine. But therefore, for me, the test of religion is in a way whether it proselytizes or not. And it seemed to me in Bali that if there ever was a time when they did that, they'd given it up. I'm sure there was a time of terrible spiritual and religious warfare in that part of the world. It can't have been the only part of the world where there never was.
The Balinese actually ran from an Islamic invasion. That's why they exist.
I mean, there's that too. But I mean, I bet between different Buddhist and Hindu groups, there have been terrible episodes of homicide, and worse. There are some parts of the world where they've calmed down and got over it. But it doesn't entitle us to forget what religion was like when it thought it could get away with it.
Okay, but I mean...
Anyway, my principle is absolutely one of coexistence and even of cultural admiration, as long as the fangs are drawn. And if you say they've been drawn in Bali, good on them.
It just sort of goes against the idea that religion poisons everything, which is your basic point. Perhaps it's a rhetorical point.
You're describing a culture and praising it, as far as I know, justly, to precisely the extent to which it doesn't resemble really a religion. Now, is that me having it both ways? I mean...
It certainly resembles a religion to me, and I would say probably to the majority of the Balinese people. But
what do you get if you cross a Jehovah's Witness with a Unitarian? Someone who comes and knocks on your door for no particular reason. Unitarians are religious too. They say their apparent belief is one God at the most. They don't. I don't have the energy for a real quarrel with them, but I mean, I don't terrifically respect it either. As long as all I ask is that it leaves me alone.
What do you think about liberation theology?
It's a contradiction in terms.
What about
the emancipation of the human personality, the human mind, is from theology. There are no two ways about it. I don't care if I run into some priest in Colombia who thinks that Fidel Castro should be Pope. It bores me. It irritates me. I ask him the same question. Is there anything you're saying that an atheist couldn't say that might be right or might be wrong, but would still be said? What's the theological bit for? No, Jesus doesn't have a special privilege for the poor. He says, render unto Caesar. Don't you believe that? If not, why go on as if you did? No, it's piffle. It's callow piffle.
Let's look at another example. There's a place called the Oasis here in Sydney. It's a shelter for young homeless people. It was a subject of a very moving documentary not so long ago. And from that it's clear that the heart and soul of this place is a Salvation Army captain called Paul Moulds and his wife. Now they're non-judgmental as far as I can see. They don't seem to be pushing their religion. Essentially, they practice their faith by helping others. So can that be poisonous?
No, but in what sense in that case is it religious? Again, you're saying these people are so nice they're hardly religious at all. You're making... You took care to pick the example where their faith had nothing to do with it. No, we're not mentioning any of that.
It's not clear at all.
We just like running orphanages. Now, I'll just tell you something. most people of faith who like running orphanages aren't that nice. And I know that Australia is one of the places where I don't need to underline that. So again, if you're going to accept or claim the one, you have to take on the other. Whereas, I'll give you an example. I like giving blood, okay? It's not that I think I should, and that I was brought up in the idea of the National Health Service, but I actually positively enjoy it. More than shedding it. I find it a pleasurable, relaxing experience, and I get pleasure from the idea that the National Health Service, or wherever I am, isn't going to run out of blood. And I don't lose a pint, because I regrow it quite quickly, but someone else gets one. I liked that. There's a great book by an old socialist called Peter Titmuss called The Gift Relationship, about how people like to help and they get positive benefit to themselves from helping other people. And I also have a very rare blood group indeed, and I want to make sure that when it's my turn to hemorrhage, there's enough blood around the place. Why make a strenuous thing of it? I don't say, and by the way, vote for my party now, or come over to my team or so. No, I've just done a good thing for its own sake. How about that?
Because I don't think it's healthy for people to want there to be a permanent, unalterable, irremovable authority over them. I don't like the idea of a father who never goes away. And nor do you, if you think about it. When you get closer to parenthood, you won't say to your children, don't worry, I'll never die. You won't be at my funeral, I'll be at yours. I'll be at your grandchildren's funeral. You'll never hear the end of me. That's actually not loving paternity. The idea of a king who cannot be deposed, very un-American idea as well as a very undemocratic one. The idea of a judge who doesn't allow a lawyer or a jury or an appeal. This is an appeal to absolutism. It's the part of ourselves that's not so nice, that wants security, that wants certainty, that wants to be taken care of. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the human struggle for freedom was against the worst kind of dictatorship of all, the theocracy, the one that claims it has God on its side, the divine right of kings, the feudal system, the monarchical one against which the American Revolution, with its secular humanism, took place. I believe the totalitarian temptation has to be resisted, and I believe this is one of its core and origin points. And so what I'm inviting you to do is to consider emancipating yourself from the idea that you, selfishly, are the sole object of all the wonders of the cosmos and of nature, because that's not a humble idea at all. It's a very arrogant one, and there's no evidence for it. You'd do better to emancipate yourself from it and do some real study of genetics and biology and cosmology. And then, again, a second emancipation, to think of yourselves as free citizens who are not in thrall to any supernatural, eternal authority, which you will always find is interpreted for you by other mammals who claim to have access to this authority that gives them special power over you. Don't allow yourselves to have your lives run like that.
That's partly why I favor compulsory religious instruction in schools. Because I know of no other way to guarantee the steady mass production of atheism among the young.
Man did not create God. Men and women created many, many, many gods, and always have since the dawn of our history, and still do. And one of those gods may be true, out of all of them, might be real, or all of them could be false, or all of them could be true. And the overwhelming probability, it seems to me, as the cults that attach to each other, is that all of them are false, and for the same reason. They are made up by creatures half a chromosome away from being chimpanzees, and I'm afraid to say it shows. Thank you.
I used to enjoy scripture lessons because it was my first, I didn't know this, but it was my first work as a literary critic. I was going through, well, no, it was called Search the Scriptures. They'd give you a text on a piece of gummed paper that the government would send, because we're an officially Anglican country, my country of birth. The Queen is the head of the church as well as the state, you know all this, and the armed forces. I hope she has a long life, if only because the moment she checks out, her bat-eared, chinless, resentful, Islam-fancying son will become the head of the church and the head of the state and the armed forces at that instant, which is what you get if you found a regime on the family values of Henry VIII. Now, as it happens, we do have some very good descriptions of the life of Socrates that make his existence to me plausible, but it doesn't matter to me at all whether he was real or not. What matters is that someone advanced his method of reasoning, his testing of evidence against experience, his commitment to a certain kind of dialectical honesty, and that if it hadn't been him, it would have been someone else. So that's what's precious to me. And that he never said, you've got to believe in everything I say, or go to hell or heaven. Because, and here's why you've got to agree with me, because my mother never went to bed with anybody. And that proves the truth of what I say. Or by the way, I must have looked very dead when they took me down from the cross, but I didn't die. And that proves my point. I'm willing to grant it all. I'm willing to grant the Immaculate Conception first, then the virgin birth, then the resurrection, and the Annunciation and the Assumption. I'm willing to grant all of it. It doesn't prove the truth of the proposition that you should take no thought for the morrow. The central doctrine of Jesus of Nazareth, take no thought for the morrow.